All right, this is going to be a position to work on. It's almost going to be a stretch and strengthening and external rotation. So I'm going to be actually coming from external into internal rotation with the band. But I like this as something where the band's going to pull me into that stretch and I'm going to pull back out of it. I like to start off on the back, but it can also be done in sitting. So I have a band and I'm going to anchor it to something. So if I'm at home, I'm probably going to anchor it to the bottom of my couch. I'm just going to use this treatment table and I'm going to take the handle through the loop and create a little slip tie around the table, right? So I have this band. Now, if I'm at home, I'm probably going to start off doing this on my back. So I'll slide away. Now, just spatially in this room, I may not get as much tension on the band as I'd like, but I want to make sure that when my arm goes back to as far as I can go, that this band is not loose. So I want to have tension when my arm is back in that position. Now, as I start off here, I'm basically going to scoot away like I'm doing, so there's tension on the band. Now, as far as my elbow position, some people are a little bit more comfortable with something small propped underneath here. So a towel or a small washcloth may give me just a little bit of a lift off the ground, because you can see as I drop down, there may be somewhat of a downward slant of my arm, which may make it a little uncomfortable. Raising the elbow up may make it better, right? So as I'm here, I have the band in my hand. Now that band is going to passively pull me back into this externally rotated position. Now as I go back, I want to watch that my ribs do not come up towards the ceiling and my back arching off the ground. So I try and make sure that I push my back down flat into the ground. You can see a little bit of a pulling upwards on my belt buckle to flatten into the ground as I tense my stomach. And I let this band take me back as far as I can go into this external rotation. And from here, I'm just pulling back out of it. And I tend to go just to this neutral or 90-degree position. So this is just a very gentle way to start having the band stretch me into external rotation and then have me activate more of my shoulder internal rotation to pull me out of that position. This is when I'll also play around with elbow position. So ideally I'm going to be elbow right around the level of my shoulder, but if that's uncomfortable, I may come down a little. And nice and slow into the motion, and then I'll be a little bit quicker to pull back out of it. A couple things I want to watch is that as I pull out of this position, I want to make sure that my shoulders not start to pop up off the ground. So I try and keep this part of my shoulder down, right? So that nothing is really changing except for my arm rotating through this plane. And I try and make sure also I don't get a lot of shifting around in my elbow position. I see people as they do this, their elbow starts to slide and they get a lot of motion in their arm. I'm really trying to fix my elbow to the ground and just rotate through this axis, maintaining this L in my elbow as I go through this rotation. So once again, just very slow on the way back, as far as I can go. If I get any pain or tightness, then I get out of there and I pull back to this neutral position. This can also be done in sitting. So if I'm at home and I have an ottoman or a coffee table, or I have this like portable stool, I can do the same thing here. So I can sit back on my heels, or I can sit down on my hips. All right. Now this stool is a little bit high. I can do this if I have a coffee table, anything, even like an exercise ball works pretty well. But I want to try and set myself up so this is at around the same height, elbow to shoulder. And I can do the same thing here. So I can start with my hand a little forward, and now this is going to pull me back into that same external rotation. And then that same coming forward, just as far as comfortable. And sitting, I like to go just to where the band touches me on the arm. And if anything now, I'm trying to lightly press down into my elbow to avoid any popping up of my shoulder. So I feel like I'm kind of sucking my humerus down very gently, not as hard as I can, just very lightly pulling it down away from my ear as I go through this motion. Very slow and controlled coming back, trying to make sure I'm not twisting or shifting any other parts of my body. It's really isolated to just the shoulder without anything else happening. Really slow and controlled coming back into the motion and then coming back down. I like to watch, same thing here, that my elbow is not drifting forward or back, and then I'm not starting to lose that L. So even if I do this in a small range, and let's say I'm really stiff in my shoulder, I may only be able to get to here, which is fine, but the question is, can I really isolate this so nothing else is trying to, oh yeah, I want to go further so my back's arching, or I want to go further so I'm starting to let my hand come up to the side. So really control the position, not worrying about getting super deep to where you feel like you're compensating elsewhere.